Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is actually just measure out the size that I want my canvas to be. I'm doing this on a raw duct cotton. It's Frederickson is the brand. And so I just draw it out with one of my chalk markers. You can use a pencil though, and then I cut it out. Okay, so now we are going to size our canvas. So sizing protects your fabric from all the oils in the ground, which is going to be our next step. So I am using a big fluffy brush. It's a 4-inch brush, and it is actually called a gesso brush, and I got it at dickblick.com. And now I am actually turning it over and sizing the back of it as well. So when you're sizing your linen or your cotton or whatever fabric you're preparing, you're going to do it on the front and the back. And then once that dries, we're actually going to start adding the ground. So I like to add ground instead of using a gesso. You can definitely use a gesso, but when I'm preparing like a raw canvas, I will do the sizing and the ground, and that's how I prepare it. There's nothing wrong with like getting something from the store that's pre-gessoed or anything like that. Just for my commissions and my like my pieces with like the higher price value, I like to make sure that I have like the best materials and that it's being prepared the right way, and so I just do it myself. But I mean, definitely for beginners or, even for experts and professionals, like there's nothing wrong with just like getting something that's pre-gessoed or using a gesso from the store. This is just what I prefer to do. So anyway, I'm using this ground, and it's from Gamblin. Pretty much all my supplies are from Gamblin. And the ground is what's in that little paint bucket. And I'm just taking out ground, putting it onto my linen, and then I'm pushing it around and filling in all those valleys and like all of the peaks and making it all smooth. And that's going to also allow my brushes to last a lot longer, because my brushes will be working on like a nice smooth surface versus something like bumpy and edgy. And so, yeah, the brushes are going to like that too. And I also just like to work on a nice smooth surface. So I like when it doesn't have like all those valleys and all the tooth to it, I like to really smooth it out. And so the ground helps do that. I'm using a metal palette knife because you have to stir up the little paint can, like the paint can of ground every once in a while to, get it to be the right consistency. And so it's easier to kind of like mix that up with my metal palette knife. You don't need a metal palette knife. You could use a plastic one. That's a little cheaper, but I think it's a little easier to use the metal one. And then another thing that you can do if your ground is getting a little bit thick and it's a little bit hard to spread around, you can actually put a little bit of gamsol, which is OMS, odorless mineral spirits, which is Gamblin's gamsol. So just like put some drops of that in there and mix it up. It makes it a little bit easier to spread around. So you can do 2 or 3 layers of this. It's artist choice. For me, it just depends on what my project is and what my preference is at that time. But basically, just make sure you let it dry fully in between layers of ground. So you just need like the 1 layer of PVA sizing, which is another Gamblin product. You can get other sizing, but I use PVA size from Gamblin. And I put that on the front and the back, and then I let that fully dry, and that usually takes like about 6 hours or so. And then when you do the ground, it could take up to 24 hours. But I actually like to put it in front of a fan so it goes a little bit faster. But you can definitely just like, do a layer of ground, go to sleep, and then the next day, like the next evening, do it again. But it just depends on if you're in a rush. You can put it in front of a fan for it to go a little bit faster. So this is my second layer. I don't know if you've been able to notice, but it really does get your hands really messy. You can definitely wear gloves if that's something that you want to do, because you'll probably get product on your hands. On this one, I actually like wrapped my card in a paper towel that I'm using, so my hands are like a little bit cleaner that way. And yeah, I'm just filling in like all the holes. I don't want to see any of the linen going through. This is my second layer in here, and I'm just working really diligently. This whole thing probably took me like maybe about 20 minutes of like per layer of this ground. I really worked it in there for a good amount of time, maybe 30 minutes for the ground too. So just be really diligent with it, getting into all those little nooks and crannies and making it nice and smooth and even. So that way you're good to go. I don't like to stretch my canvas. I just like to have it flat because I have a background in drawing, and for other reasons, I just like to have my my linen be really, really flat. And so what I do is I put this big cutting board I have on top of it, but you can use anything that's flat. And then I put books on top of that. So under this green mat, that's where the linen is. So and then I put books on top so it's nice and flat. And I actually don't mind if the edges are a little bit wavy. I think it looks really nice, but that's all up to you guys. If it's something where you want to stretch the canvas before you do all this, then that's totally fine. That's your decision to make, but I like to work on just like a flat surface versus on a stretch canvas. So anyway, this is how I prepare my linen and my cotton from raw cotton all the way to ready for my oil painting. So yeah, I hope that that's helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thanks.